Hello, everyone. Welcome to our call. We're going to be going over today the home buying process and then some tips for the upcoming year. All right, a little bit about us. My name is David Sanchez. I am a full-time realtor and I've been selling real estate for the last 7 years. I focus in Long Beach, LA, and the OC area.
Hi, my name is Kimberly. All the same, except I've only been selling real estate for 5 years. I'm originally from Texas and I lived in New York for a little bit.
And Andrew.
Hey everybody, it's great to meet you all. My name is Andrew Travaya, and I've been doing home loans for, just over 3 years now. I do service all areas of California and some out of state as well.
Perfect. All right, Kimberly, if you could just kick it off.
Yes, so there are a lot of reasons to own a home. I'm sure you all have your individual reasons, but these are the top five that carry through for most people. Number one is equity. This is the opportunity to build that equity over time. And equity is the amount that you owe versus how much the home is worth. Every time you pay off, you're building that equity. And that goes hand in hand with appreciation. You're hoping that your home's value is going to continue to increase, and normally it does. It goes up a percentage every year, so that when you go to sell, you're making a little bit of a profit there, or a large profit. Then we have tax benefits. There are a lot of them. I'm not a CPA, but we actually do have a seminar that we do quarterly. We have a CPA on, and they go over all the tax benefits that you can have when you own a home. Then we have upgrades. When you're living in a rental, you can do upgrades, but you don't really get that money back. You get to enjoy it, but you don't make money on your upgrades. When you own a home, you can potentially make money on your upgrades. So not only are you making the home better for you, it's going to add to the value of your home if done correctly. And then lastly, investment. Your home can be used as a rental property, stepping stone to your next property. You can collect rental properties. It can be a nice way to invest in your financial future. So when we're talking about the home buying process, there's a couple of things you want to do in the beginning. Number one, you want to build your team. So hopefully that's us right here. You want to make sure that you have a really great realtor or team of realtors that are working together, and a really great lender or team of lenders that are working together. That's really important. And those are people that you want to find right away. You don't want to wait until you're in the process to find them. You want to make sure that you also understand your credit score. It's important to meet with a lender to find out what that credit score is. That might be different than what you find on Credit Karma. And they can help you increase that score or take care of anything that you might not have known about. And then you want to boost your savings. That's really important. I wish we could say that it doesn't take any money to buy a house, but unfortunately it does. And you want to have that savings as well. Again, a lender can help you set that goal, set that budget accordingly. And then lastly, you want to know your numbers. And these things can constantly change, like interest rates. So it's important for you to understand that, know what those numbers are, know what your budget is, and make sure that you get pre-approved so that you have that competitive edge when it comes to purchasing this next property. And speaking of pre-approvals, it's extremely important that you get that early in the process. It's like going Black Friday shopping without a credit card. You're going to find a lot of great things that you want to buy, and yet you can't buy them. Before you start shopping around, it's important to meet with a lender, understand your budget, understand how much money that you can borrow from the bank, and understand how much that you feel comfortable borrowing. Maybe you don't want to borrow all the money that they're offering you. And again, that's something that you can find out when you get your pre-approval. So speaking of pre-approvals, I'm actually going to turn it over to Andrew. He's going to tell you a little bit more about that process.
Awesome. Thank you, Kimberly, for all that great information. All right, everybody, so let's first talk about what is a pre-approval. A pre-approval is when a loan officer like myself would go ahead and review your documents to, number one, determine if the bank would finance your loan, but also to determine how much you could qualify for. Okay, and to do so, we would need to review a few documents. As you can see, they are listed here. Beginning with your a copy of your driver's license and social security card. For those who are workers, we would need the last 3 days of paychecks and your previous 2 years of W-2s. And if you're self-employed, we would need your past 2 years tax returns. Additionally, we would also need any proof of additional income. This can look like child support, alimony, disability, retirement, things like that, just so we can ensure that we are giving you all the appropriate income that you are receiving. Okay, and then lastly, the bank does want to view essentially the bank wants to view where the funds are coming from. that you'll be using for your down payment and your closing costs. And so to do so, the bank would just need the past 2 months of your bank statements, or if you are using funds from a retirement account, they would just need that quarterly brokerage statement. Okay, and it's important to include all the pages. Okay, all right. So another important thing when qualifying to purchase a home is building your FICO score. First of all, what's a FICO score? A FICO score is a 3-digit number between 300 and 850 that reflects your willingness to repay debt, otherwise known as your credit worthiness. And so it's important to understand that the reason why credit scores are taken into account when purchasing a home is because the bank needs to understand that you are going to pay them back for the money that they are lending you to purchase your home, right? That's why credit scores are so important. And with that being said, we also wanted to provide some quick credit building tips. Okay, first of all, start small, okay, and pay your charges in full at the end of the month. This will show the bank that you are responsible and can pay off all your debt. Okay. Apart from that, you want to make sure that you pay your bills on time, and be sure to keep charges well within your limit. It's important to keep track of when things are due, but also it's important not to overspend and essentially bite off more than you can chew, right? Because the bank wants to see that you can pay off and afford all the things that you're charging. Okay. And the last thing is just to read your credit report regularly. This is just to verify that everything that's on there should be on there, and just to help protect you from any fraud or theft. Alrighty. So with that being said, I also want to go over a couple of different types of loans, with the first one being the FHA loan. The FHA loan is one of the more common programs for first-time home buyers for a few reasons. The first reason would be a low down payment option. With the FHA loan, the down payment can be as low as 3.5% of that purchase price. Okay. Apart from that, the minimum required FICO score is a 580. And because of the low FICO requirement and the low down payment requirement, that's why it's so appealing to first-time home buyers. Alrighty. With the FHA loan, the payment can be fixed for 30 years or a different loan term, or adjustable, just depending if you want to explore that option. Your payment could fluctuate. Alrighty. And then for the FHA loan, the private mortgage insurance, otherwise known as PMI, is not cancelable for 11 years. Okay, so you have to account for that for at least the first 11 years of the loan. Okay. Another one that I want to mention is the conventional loan. So again, this one is also very common for first-time home buyers. Much like the FHA loan, it can be a fixed monthly payment or an adjustable one, just depending on whatever your preference is. Now, with the conventional loan, the private mortgage insurance is cancelable once you have 20% equity in your property. So that is something that is more advantageous compared to the FHA loan. Now, for the conventional loan, the minimum required FICO score is a 620, okay, which is a bit higher than the required FICO score for the FHA loan. And then for the conventional loan, you can put down payments as low as 3 to 5% of that purchase price. And the last one I have here is the VA loan. So this is for veterans and active military members and their families. Now, this loan is very advantageous. There is no private mortgage insurance. Now, apart from that, there is no down payment requirement either. That's appealing for a number of ways, as I'm sure that you can imagine. But with the VA loan, you typically see lower monthly payments because there's no PMI, and the rates are fairly lower than conventional. Okay.
Yeah, VA is a good one. I just closed one recently with a VA client, and it was really smooth. And they used to take longer to go through. This last one was 21 days. It was pretty fast. So I was impressed. One question, Andrew, that someone asked is can you go a little bit deeper into PMI? They just want to know what that means and who is benefiting from the PMI.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's a great question. So the PMI is whenever you put less than 20% down for your down payment on the purchase of your home. So the PMI is protecting the bank's interests because they see that if you put less than 20%, they're adding this insurance just so that they're protecting themselves, right? Now, once you reach 20% equity on a conventional loan, you can reach out to your mortgage provider and request that they remove it. Okay, now for the FHA loan, the PMI is on there for at least 11 years. Okay.
Got it. And then also, could you give it like an idea of how much does it cost for PMI? PMI, I know a lot of people ask me that, or, oh, is it going to be another $1,000 a month or something? But could you go into that?
Yeah. So I would say just depending on what your credit score is, like what loan program they're looking at. So for example, let's just say if you're using like a conventional loan, 5% down on a purchase price of $700,000, ideally that that PMI a month per month would be about 200 to $250 a month.
Got it. Okay. It's just good to get people to get an idea because I know I get that question often.
All right. So one thing that we wanted to make sure that we covered was just the available loan programs that are out there for buyers, much like yourself. So one that we did want to highlight was the Cal HFA FHA loan program. So this is where the state of California will cover your down payment of 3.5% for the purchase of your home. Okay, this is very advantageous because a lot of people don't necessarily have the money saved for their down payment and their closing costs. So with this program, the state will cover your down payment, and all that you need to come in with is your closing costs. Okay.
All right, perfect, Andrew. And I'll take it away from here. So that was one program that Andrew was talking about that's available. There's also this is one that I love because I live in Long Beach. There's a program that's out there. It's a $25,000 grant that you don't have to repay. It's an amazing program. A lot of different cities have programs out there. I know LA County has one if the property's in LA County or LA City. There's a few different options there. But the Long Beach one, I know we have a couple people on the call that are in Long Beach right now. We'll talk more after the call, but this is a $25,000 grant that you don't have to repay. There are some things that you got to check off the list. You do need to be a first-time home buyer. You have to currently live in Long Beach and you need to purchase a home in Long Beach. That's important. But you can use it for really anything. You use it for down payment. You can use it to pay closing costs, or if you just want to pay down the rate, say you don't like the rate right now and you want to do like a 3-2-1 buy down or just pay down the rate for the life of the loan, then you can do that. And we'll, speaking of 3-2-1 buy down, we'll ask Andrew a little bit more about that later if you guys have questions on that. But this is a great program that's out there. But I like to throw this in here just so you can see that there's a lot of stuff out there. And talking to someone like Andrew, say you live in, we had a call a couple weeks ago. Someone lived in San Diego and he looked it up and there was a program out there in San Diego and you just got to know what to look for. So reaching out to a lender such as Andrew is a good idea. All right. So the 10 rules, that's what I like to call it. This is something you're going to want to know now, and then especially when you're in escrow, because you want to make sure we get to that point where we get to hand you the keys. Number one is proceed with caution when you change jobs or if you want to quit your job. What I would say is wait till you get the keys to your home and then you could switch jobs. If you're currently a nurse and you decide you want to go be a rocket scientist, that's a great job. I'm sure it would be great to have you as a rocket scientist, but it's a completely different job. So the lender's going to say, "Hey, we feel a little uneasy with this." But if you wanted to go from being a nurse at this hospital to this hospital, that's good. You're still doing the same kind of job and that doesn't scare them. Also, don't buy a new car if you have a car that works. I always ask people like, "Hey, is your car doing okay? If it doesn't and it's a 911 to get a new car, okay, maybe you do got to get a new car, but you might have to hold off on purchasing a home because that's going to throw off your debt to income ratio. If you can get your car moving until you get to your keys, then that'd be great. Once you get the keys, then you could buy that new Lambo. Number three, don't use your credit cards excessively or let your accounts fall behind. That's important. If you're going to normally spend, let's say, $1,000 a month on your credit card, that's fine. You could still spend $1,000 a month. You just don't want to go jump to spend $20,000 a month because that's going to scare the lender and they're going to say, "Hey, what's happening right now? Why are they spending so much money?" So that's a good one, but do your normal spending. Don't spend money you have set aside for closing costs. You do want to have some money. I recommend putting it in a separate account over here on the side. Let's call it a house fund, dream fund, call it whatever you want, but let's call it don't touch this money fund because if you use it before the close of escrow, that's going to make it a challenge because you're going to need that money. Number five, don't omit debts or liabilities from your loan application. Andrew, you can give me a thumbs up if this has happened before, but people throwing things in their last minute of times where, oh, I going to tell you about the alimony I had to pay, or a lot of different things. They won't tell you, but in the end, the lender's going to find out. So just be transparent up front. It's much better to figure it out than in the final mile, right before you get your home. Number six, don't buy furniture or appliances until you own your home. That's an important one. There's one story I always like to share that luckily it wasn't my client, but it was someone I work with. Of course, it was the wife. It could be anyone, but in this case, it was the
I
wife.
know.
No, but she was really excited. She got this new beautiful home that they were going to close in a few weeks. And then she decided to buy all new furniture, and she got the expensive stuff. She went to Crate and Barrel or something, but she got the good stuff. And it ended up being about $20,000 worth of furniture. Amazing, great. Okay, it was delivered to the house that wasn't theirs yet. But the problem with that is they were already close with numbers, and that threw off their debt to income ratio, and then they weren't able to qualify for the loan. That was a problem. So luckily, the seller was accommodating and they allowed them to take a little bit more time because they needed to return all the furniture. They had to wait 30 days for it to fall off their credit. And then the lender said, okay, now we're good. We can close on this loan. But that was a very stressful time. And if they would have just waited till they got the keys, they could have had their furniture a month earlier. Number seven, don't apply for any new lines of credit. If you have credit cards already or bank accounts, just leave the ones that you have. You don't need to switch any of that stuff. Just keep what you have. Best advice there. Number eight, don't make large deposits without first checking with your loan officer. This is a really common one. I don't have any family members that want to give me $100,000, but if I did, and this happens, so a lot of times it's parents that, oh, I got this for little Timmy. Here's money set aside for their first home, which I'm going to tell you, I would take that money happily, but you just want to make sure you receive it the right way. You want to make sure that you have it a letter and you talk to the lender about that. They're going to have a letter that says, yes, we give Timmy this money and it's a gift. He doesn't have to repay us. That's important because the way they see it is if there's a large sum of money that comes in your account, the bank sees it as, oh, they probably got another loan. And that's a problem because the way the bank sees it, they don't know who you're going to pay off first, right? Because they don't, are they second in line? Are they first in line? They don't know. So that scares them and they're going to say, nope, we're not going to give you that. And one other thing to bring up is if you have money under your mattress, get it in the account as soon as you can. That's not one of those, you can't walk up to Andrew and say, hey, I got a briefcase full of hundreds. Yeah, that's not going to work. You want to try to get into the bank as soon as possible because it has to season in the account. Again, talk to him about that if you have $1 million in cash at your house. All right, number nine, don't change or add bank accounts. I know I said this earlier. Just keep the accounts you have. It makes it so much easier. And then number 10, don't co-sign for a loan for anyone for any reason. This is a really common one. People that have kids, oh, their kid has got a great job. Oh, maybe they're 20 years old and they just want to get a new car. And oh, dad, mom, can you just co-sign for me? I'll pay for everything. I have good credit and all that stuff. Yeah, that all sounds good, but the problem is that goes, even though you're co-signing, it still goes under as a liability on your credit. So you want to make sure once you get the keys, co-sign for them, do whatever you want. But until you get the keys to your home, you want to stay away from anything that's going to throw off your credit history. All right. All right. No, that was a lot right there. Does anyone have any questions? And you could throw them in the chat if you haven't already. And if not, that's okay. We'll just keep going through and you could ask them at the end.
There is one question. It says, does the grant apply if you bought a home, but it was many years ago?
Yes, that's a really good question. So if you bought a home, I believe it's within 3 years, then that would be a first-time home buyer. Is that correct, Andrew? I think it's within 3 years. Technically, it would be
Correct.
counting as a first-time home buyer, and that's the same thing with FHA program. So similar with the grant for Long Beach. And one thing that's a little different with the Long Beach grant is if you purchased something and it was over 3 years ago, that's fine. You could still qualify. But if someone in your family has purchased a home ever, then you actually wouldn't qualify for this Long Beach grant. Again, we could talk a little bit more about that later, but that is That's little thing in the fine print, but that's a really good question. All right, any other question? Perfect. All right, again, at the end, we'll have some time too. We can go over more stuff. Okay, a little bit about today's market. So I just took this screenshot today, and this is the last 30 years, so you have an idea of what rates look like. You could say they went up a lot, they went down, and now they're going back up a little bit. You could see the average rate on there. So just something to get an idea of where we're at today. We also took a screenshot a couple days ago, or a couple weeks ago actually, and we were at 6.95 for a 30-year fix. So Andrew, I know you're the lender. I like to stay in my lane. I'm good at selling houses, but I'm not a lender, so that's why I have someone like Andrew on the call to answer this. But Andrew, what would you say would the rate be right around now?
So actually, so the average 30-year fixed rate is still 6.95. But for the FHA loan, you're looking at about a 5.75. For conventional, you're looking at roughly between a 6.275 and a 6.5%.
Got it. All right, your dog's excited about that.
Yeah. That's
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Okay, great. So a couple other things I want to bring up. So pandemic interest rates. I know that I have people that say, "Oh, I'm going to wait till it goes down to 3% again." I don't know if that's ever going to happen. And if it does, then great. You could just refinance at that point. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime in the near future. If it happens in 20 years, that maybe, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime in the near future. Also, interest rates are adjustable. So just know that. Again, I'm wrong with this. Great. It drops down to 3% in a couple of years. Just refinance. You could do that. You could also get different types of loans. So just know that you can do that. For single family and condo inventory, so I'm more looking at my market. So I'm in Long Beach right now, Long Beach, LAOC area, similar markets. I've noticed that the inventory started to pick up a little bit. It's not this big spike of inventory though. It's a very gradual increase in inventory. So just know, but that's a good thing for us, more houses for us to look at. Also, anyone on the call that is into multifamily homes, which would be say 2 to 4 units, I've noticed there's been a slight uptick in inventory for that. So that's been really exciting. I have a couple clients I'm helping right now with one with a duplex and one with a triplex. And I've noticed there's been quite a few out there, which has been really good. All right. Homes on the market a little bit longer. Just know if you go on any of these sites, Realtor, Zillow, my website or our website, then you'll notice things have been on the market a little longer. Hey, there's a house that's on for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Just know that's a little bit more common now. The price homes that are priced correctly or competitively, they go pretty quick, but ones that are priced a little high, I see that as a great opportunity to potentially get a good deal. All right, we also have a lot of loan programs that are available. This is something I want to bring up during the initially with the pandemic, rates were really low. We didn't have a lot of these programs now the government has come up with programs. A lot of companies have come up with different programs that are out there, so know that there's some good stuff. So talk to Andrew about that. We're also able to negotiate. I talked about this a second ago, but we're able to negotiate now, which is good. It's not one of those crazy markets where we're getting 30 offers typically. And I really love a house that's overpriced because I see that as an opportunity, because some sellers think, "Oh, I missed my chance to sell this property," and that's a great time to be able to get in a little bit lower. So you just got to talk to an agent that knows what they're doing and they can explain that process to you. And then one thing I always like to do, Kimberly and I, and that's why I love Kimberly, but we're not going to try to sell you on anything. We just want you to know the best time for you to buy is whenever you're ready. We can educate you along the way, but we're never going to give you any pressure saying, "Oh, you got to buy now or you're never going to buy again. You're never going to have your chance." We're never going to say that, but we'll help educate you once we get to that point. All right. And then Kimberly, if you could
Yeah.
jump into this one.
So yeah, we don't want you to purchase until you're ready, but a lot of people ask, how do I know when I'm ready? So determining readiness has a lot to do with finances. So one of the questions that gets asked a lot is, how much do I need? And these are the top things you're going to be spending your your money on. Number one is your down payment. There is a myth that you have to have 20% or more to purchase a home. We talked about that earlier. Andrew was going over the FHA program. That's not true. You do generally need a down payment, however, and it's going to be between 3.5 to 20% of the purchase price. But honestly, what we see more than not is between 5 and 10%. Then an inspection is going to cost a little bit of money, and that is money well spent. You're going to have a general inspector come in and take a look at the house from the bottom to the top, and they're going to go over any issues or any problems they see in the future. And that's going to be around $350, $550, depending on the size of the home. And then if you are getting a loan, you are going to be required to have an appraisal. So an appraisal is an opinion of value. Someone is hired by the bank to come out. They take a look at the house and they tell you how much they think the house is worth. Those are ordered right away. That's typically going to run you between $500 and $700. And then there are closing costs. There are a lot of people doing a lot of different things in the process of buying a home, and everyone is working. They all have to get paid. So you're paying all of those different people, all of those companies, looking at about 2.5% of the purchase price paid at closing. So that's paid at the very end. That can vary a little bit, but that's an average. And then lastly, your realtor. So your realtor is also paid a percentage of the purchase price, but that's only paid if you complete your purchase. And customarily, that's still paid by the seller. You might have heard there's been a lot of changes this year, but again, that's typically paid by the seller. If you don't close escrow, you're not going to pay for the closing costs or the realtor, and you'll obviously get that down payment back. But typically the inspection and appraisal, once they're paid for, you can't get that money back. Which brings us to our next question is, does anyone know how realtors actually get paid? Because when we ask this question, type it in the chat if you know how or who pays us or how we get paid, because a lot of people don't know how we get paid. Do we have any answers?
Someone said, I have no idea. Yeah, that's pretty common. We get that a lot.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how we get paid when we are representing you, the buyer. So realtors and brokers are not salaried. We do not get paid by the hour, nor are we reimbursed for our expenses. So if you work with a realtor, properties over 6 months, 40 homes, you drive all over the city or the state, and then you decide at the end you're going to move to Dallas, Texas, they don't get any money for any of the time they've spent with you. Realtors are independent contractors, they're business owners, so they're paid per job, and they only receive compensation at the end of your purchase when you get to the closing table. If you don't complete your purchase, the realtor does not receive any compensation. So by signing a buyer broker agreement, which is a form between you and your agent, you're going to agree to work with that realtor and pay compensation to that realtor at the close of escrow. And this might be something that you've heard about this year because it's been in the news. It's been talked about a lot because there's been some changes with that. And we wanted to go over those changes for anyone who's curious or they've heard something about that. Number one is you're going to need a written agreement with your agent. Before you start touring any homes, before you set foot, if you call the Zillow button, you're like, hey, I want to go see a home, you still have to sign this agreement. And it is important, let me tell you, especially when you are hitting the Zillow button, that you read over that agreement. And it should clearly list the services they're going to provide, for how long they're going to provide them, and how much. So make sure you read that before you sign it. A lot of times we sign things, we don't read it. You need to read this. Those compensation terms must be very clear. The agreement has to show exactly what your agent is getting paid and how that's calculated. Again, generally a percentage. And that fee is negotiable and set by each real estate professional, just like other jobs where people are independent contractors. When you hire a dog walker, they all have different prices. They set those prices. With your real estate agent, the final fee cannot exceed the original agreed upon amount. Then we have virtual tours and in person. Sometimes those are different, but in this case, they are the same. The agreement must be in place whether you're doing it on FaceTime or Zoom or you're there in person. However, if you just walk into an open house, you do not need an agreement. You might be asked to sign in, but you don't have to have an agreement with that agent. Now, typically, sellers are paying this compensation. Before they paid, and currently they're still generally paying either all or partial compensation to your agent when you are the buyer. You can additionally ask the sellers to pay with other things or pay for other things like closing costs, again, the agent's compensation, closing credits, or any other credits that your agent can negotiate for you.
That's a good point too, Kimberly. I know you brought up we typically will have the sellers pay for us. And I could speak for Kimberly and myself that every transaction we've had this year where we've helped the buyer, we've been paid by the seller. So luckily that hasn't really changed much, which is really good. So you get an agent that's good and they could do that negotiating, then they can get the seller to pay for all that stuff is always the goal. All right. Thank you, Kimberly.
No problem.
All right, buying a new build. This is a good one. I just closed on a transaction recently where I helped with a new build and the place looked great. But what we needed to do is look into that property and we did our inspection, found some things wrong with it. Know that their new builds are great, but there's a lot of times they build 100 of them or they'll build 30 of them for that complex and we find some things wrong with it. But that's why you have an agent to represent you. And that being said, whenever you do go to these new builds, you want to don't just go on your own, talk to your agent, hopefully us, and we can go with you before you go in, because what they'll do is they'll say, "Oh, John, just sign right in here and we'll take care of you. We'll walk you around the property." And this is what Kimberly brought up earlier. A lot of people don't read things when they sign them. I highly recommend always reading it. I always read things. I know Kimberly does too, because there's a lot of stuff hiding in there. In those documents for those new builds, they will say on there is they'll say, "Oh, yeah, come on in, no problem, but I won't be represented by anyone. I don't want anyone to help me." That's pretty much what you're saying. Again, you could read it and you could see, but I wouldn't sign that yet. I would go in with an agent. In the end, every new builder that I've ever worked with has always paid me. But would they love to not pay me? Yeah, because they have a person that is getting you to sign in that they're already paying. They're paying them a salary. And is that person going to really take care of you? Or are they going to take care of the company that's paying their salary, the corporation that they're working for? So you want to have someone that's on your side, and it doesn't cost you more to have us because again, they're paying for us. So that's why I always say recommend to bring us in there with you. We're happy to go in. We love looking at property, especially new builds are always fun. So just let us know before you head in there. We can go with you. And if we go in with you the first time, then we should be fine with that particular builder. All right. And we can go in more depth on this, but if you have any questions on new builds, just reach out to us. All right, house hunting checklist. This is one that I like. Whenever I am working with a client, I'm always want to remind them to scout out the neighborhood in person. Maybe we go look at the place in the morning. Great. We look middle of the day. What I always recommend is also going a different time of the day too. Let's just say you get home normally at 7 p.m. at night. It's a little late. Okay. You want to make sure that you go to that area and walk around at night to see if you feel comfortable. Let's just say you normally walk your dog at 10 o'clock at night. Your dog likes to go pee late at night. That's fine. Great. But you want to make sure you feel comfortable walking around at that time, or the other way in the morning. Hey, how's parking? All that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that you pay attention to that. I would check out the home any time of day, drive around, walk around just to make sure. Also consider nearby freeways, shopping centers, if there's any community buildings nearby, any traffic patterns. You really want to get a good feeling for the neighborhood. Also listening for any noise. So if you're on a big street, let's say in Long Beach, you're on PCH, hey, that's going to be a street that's a little bit more loud. Or if you're right up against a freeway, yeah, you're probably going to hear the humming of the freeway all the time. And if you're okay with that, that's fine, but you just want to make sure you're aware of it. Also, airplanes. I know a lot of different airplanes in the area. We have Long Beach. It's luckily that flight path's not right over me, but I've helped a lot of clients where the flight path's right over their head. Some people don't care that much, but just know that that could be a thing that you want to make sure that you take a look at. Also, if it's one of those that is like LAX, it's international. They have flights going 24/7, so you want to make sure you pay attention to that stuff. But typically, the smaller airports they cut off at a certain point, so you're not going to get that plane going by at 2 in the morning. Another one I like to point out is to use your nose. I like to say use your senses, but this one is you want to use your nose. There's a lot of areas where maybe they smell a little bit. Say it's in an agriculture area. I used to live in Ontario, that's right by Chino area, and we had cows that were about a couple blocks from my house, and it smelled like cow manure all the time, which you get used to it after a while, but will I say I like the smell? No, it's not my favorite. But just something to think of. And if you're getting a great deal on it, then maybe you could deal with that. But just again, just be aware of that because those cows are probably not going anywhere. So just be aware of that. Also, making sure that this is one that I know from experience. I'd say police stations, fire stations, good to know where they are. It'd be nice to know that there is one in your community. Yes, that's important. But if it's right across the street, personally, I won't live there because when I used to live in Seattle, I lived right across the street from a fire station and it was a big city, so all the time, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, there'd be a fire truck going by and their sirens were going off. And I would wake up literally every day, I would say, every other day, and it was horrible. So just be aware of that. If you're by something like that, they might have you might have to hear that lovely siren. All right. And then the other one, if it's part of an HOA, a homeowners association, that's important. Typically, if it's a condo or a townhome, it's going to have that, or a lot of single family homes too that are in certain communities, they're going to have an HOA as well. So you want to be aware of that because you know what things you can do, and then if there's what those HOA dues are and all that fun stuff. All right, service providers. This is one, just know all this slide is to say that if you ever need anyone, contact myself, contact Kimberly, and we would love to connect you with the right people. If you need a home inspector, we have multiple, and when we get into escrow, then we're gonna give you those options. It's up to you. You could choose whoever you want. If you don't want to get a home inspection, that's up to you as well, which I'd highly recommend getting it. But we have a lot of people. We have plumbers, electricians. If you need a foundation person, home warranty, insurance, a lender like Andrew, that's great. If you need any movers, then we can provide all that stuff with you. And then, and feel free to let us know. You can call, text us anytime. And I always like to say, if let's say you buy a house off us now, great. We'll give you that info. You never buy a house off us. That's fine. Of course, we'd love to help you, but if not, it's fine. We will still give you any info that you need. And then also that could be within the next year, 2 years, 10 years. Know that we'll still be around and happy to provide that stuff. All right, this is my favorite slide. This is the journey to home ownership. So this is the process from start to finish. You can see it's not that scary. Okay, hope you're ready for it. Thumbs up that you guys are ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so we have a couple up here. They're excited. They're ready to buy a home. Great. So the first thing they want to do is build your team. Kimberly talked about that earlier. You have us. You could trust us. Have a lender. We have your people ready to go. Let's check that off. Obtain a pre-approval. Again, you have your lender. Andrew's here. We're going to make sure we get that pre-approval ready so that we know exactly how much we qualify for and we could jump into those properties. Number 3 is you want to sign an agreement with your agent, which Kimberly just spoke about. We want to make sure we sign that so that we can get out there and go look at some properties. Then we get the fun job of actually looking at the properties and get a feel for what you like and what you don't like. All right, now let's say we find the property that we love. That's always a good thing. They say, Kimberly, write an offer. We're ready. Great. Okay, so then we write our offer. Just know that there's the chance that we can get a counter offer. Let's say it's a competitive market and they get 3 offers on it. They decide maybe they want to give a counter offer to a couple of them. Great. Then we can go back and forth on that. But let's just say we write this offer, we get it accepted, we wrote a good offer, we got some great terms, and we got the offer accepted. Great. That's a happy day. We could do a little dance on that day for acceptance. And then within 72 hours, what you're going to want to do is wire your earnest money deposit, or also known as your EMD. That is just showing that you're a serious buyer, and that's going to be between 1 and 3%. I always recommend 3% if you can. It just shows you're a serious buyer, and what you're doing is you're wiring that money into the escrow account. And I always get the question, David, what's escrow? Escrow is a neutral third party, and they're just making sure that we all play nice. We're following the contract that we just wrote and got accepted. We're all following that and making sure that they're going to try to help get us to the finish line where you get the keys in your hand. So you wire all that money into escrow, that the 3% in this scenario, and then just note that 3% is part of your normal down payment. So for example, if you're going to put 10% for your down payment, you're putting 3% in for your earnest money deposit. By the close of escrow, you need to have the additional 7%. So it's not in addition to, it's part of your down payment. All right. And number 7, get an inspection, appraisal, and loan. So these are also your main contingencies. These are the ones that are making sure that your earnest money deposit is safe. So the first one is your inspection contingency. This defaults to 17 days. If we're going to write a competitive offer, typically I'll trim it down a little bit because we can get inspectors out right away. So what we're going to do is get this inspector out. They're going to let you know what's wrong with the home because there's always something. There's always something wrong with it, but hopefully minor stuff. But let's say, oh, there's a little leak somewhere. There's some foundation issues. There could be a lot of different things. But for this example, let's say the AC doesn't work. Okay, great. So we get and we have the AC that doesn't work. We get another AC person to come out. I always recommend getting a specialist so that we can say that we're 100% sure this doesn't work because we have a specialist that specializes in AC and HVAC, and they're going to look at that and give us a quote for, hey, you need a new one. It's going to cost $10,000. So that's where you need to have an agent that can represent you and try to go to bat. We'll try to negotiate that down. So what I would do in that situation is I would reach back out to the seller and we'd say, we'd write this up so that we're doing it the right way. And we do a request for repair. And we would say, rather than repair it, I'd say, let's just ask for a credit. It's going to be $10,000. When we wrote this offer, we wrote a good offer. It was an honest offer. We wrote it. You guys accepted it. But we thought the AC worked because we were told it worked. We just found out it does not work. So now the home is not worth what we paid for it, what we offered for it. So we want you to drop the price $10,000, or we want a $10,000 credit because it's going to start getting hot outside or cold outside or whatever. And we're going to need that money to buy a new HVAC system. All right. So that's what we try to do there. Just know that they could say no. In California, all homes are as is. So they have the option of saying, nope, sorry, kick rocks, that you get what you get. Okay, that's fine. Know that you have the option of backing out, though. You could say, you know what, you're not going to give me a credit. Okay, we're going to take our offer back. We're going to cancel escrow and then find another property. That's fine. That's your choice. And then you get your full earnest money deposit back. Or you can meet somewhere in the middle, say that, okay, they'll pay for 5,000. Okay, maybe that's worth it. But my goal is always to try to get them to pay for the whole thing or close to. So let's just say in this scenario, they say, you know what, fine, we didn't know that the AC didn't work. We'll give you the $10,000 credit. Great. Now you got that money that's out of your closing costs, so you save that. And then once you close escrow, you can get that AC if you'd like, or you can decide, you know what, I'll get it next year. Not a problem. All right. At that point, we would remove that contingency. That's the first one typically. The next one is going to be your appraisal contingency. So this is something that's required by the lender. The lender wants to make sure that home is worth what you're paying for it. Let's say we pay $500,000 for this home and the appraiser comes out and says, you know what, I think that this home is worth $510,000. That's great. That's a good day to do your dance. You just got $10,000 in equity before you even closed it. So technically, when you get your keys, you already have $10,000 in equity. That's a good day. It doesn't mean you have to pay more. That just means that we got a good deal for the property. It also could appraise at value. So it appraises at $500,000. Hey, that's also a really good day. You're going to get the loan for the full amount that you want, and we're happy. It also could go the other way around, where say it misses the appraisal, it appraises at $490. In that situation, we're off by $10,000. So what we would do is try to renegotiate that and say, you know what, the house is not worth $500,000. The appraiser said $490. We want you to drop the price $10,000, so to $490. All right, remember, this is all as is. They don't have to do anything. The seller could say, you know what, no, but you have the option of backing out if they do that. But typically what they'll do is maybe they meet you in the middle, or sometimes they'll just say, you know what, fine, we'll drop the price because they just want to close. Great, that's an option. Or you can decide, you know what, I have some money in the bank. I love this home. I don't care. I'll pay the additional $10,000. That's completely up to you. You just need to adjust your loan slightly. All right, so once we all agree on that, let's say it appraised at 510. Great, we're gonna go with that example. That's a happy day. We can remove that contingency at that point because we don't need it. And then the last one is gonna be our loan contingency. This is typically the last one that we remove, and this defaults at 17 days. And this is the one last thing to catch you in case something happens while we're going through escrow. One example that's happened to one of my clients before is she lost her job in the middle or right in the middle of escrow. Luckily, she had all of her contingencies at that point, but she ended up using that loan contingency as a way to back out. In the end, the seller was accommodating and she was actually a nurse, so that nurse example, and she got another nursing job and she was fine and we ended up closing. But there was a little bit of time in between that was a little stressful, but the good thing is we had our loan contingencies so she was safe because it had nothing to do with her. It was just, hey, the lender, she didn't qualify for it because she didn't have a job at that moment. So that's how they see it. So that's going to be your last one. So that loan contingency, now we got everything, we're good. Okay, let's remove that last contingency. And at that point, with all your contingencies removed, that's when your earnest and money deposit could be at risk. Typically, that's about 5 to 7 days max, and we're almost at the end at that point. Yeah, so we have that. And then the last one is going to be when we sign loan docs. So the lender is going to say, hey, we're good to go. We're going to get a notary to come out to you typically, or you go to escrow, and then they're going to have you. This is one where you actually have to sign with ink. Typically, it's going to be electronic signature, but on this for loan documents, you're going to have to sign with ink, and they will take care of that. And then shortly after, that's when you get the keys to your new home. And then Kimberly and I get the fun job of handing you those keys. And then we get that sold signed thing, and it's always a good time. All right. I know that was a lot, and I typically we have people that have steam coming out of their ears, and that's perfectly normal. I want you to know that. This is something that we deal with every single day. So this is not scary to us, but understand how this could seem a little scary to you. But that's why you have us to lead you through the way so that you know exactly how to get there. And any little steps that you got to take along the way, that's something that we are. All right. Speaking of hiring, this is a client that I worked with recently, and I love this client. This is a really good example of why it's good to have an agent. But this was a new build, or it was a house that was flipped behind them. You could see it. It's a really cute house in LA, and there was a flipper. Took them about a year to flip it. They did a pretty good job overall, but when we had someone crawl under the house, our inspector, they found a few things wrong. They were minor things, but they were things that added up. So what we had to do is that's where my job was to try to negotiate some things. So what I did is I negotiated a credit for some things. They weren't really 911 things, but my job was to make them seem like a big deal because I wanted to make sure my client got as much money in their pocket as possible. So in the end, we ended up negotiating. It was about a $15,000 credit. And then in the end, they didn't have to pay any closing cost because that credit was there to pay for the closing costs, which was great. So this is just one review that they did. And also, if you want to see any reviews on myself, you can just type in David Sanchez Realtor on Google, Zillow, Realtor.com, Yelp, anything. And then Kimberly, you could check on hers as well. But there's a lot of reviews on there. So don't take my word for it. All right. I like to put this slide in here. So I just want to say keep learning. You guys are doing a great job just by being on the call today. I know again this could be a little bit scary, but it's great that you are getting educated on it so that when you get to that point where we are looking at homes, that it's not going to be so foreign at that point. A lot of times we'll be in escrow and be like, oh, I remember you saying something about that on the call. Great. That's what this is all about. So thank you for being on this call, which is the First-Time Homebuyers Seminar. We doing that today. One of those that Kimberly brought up was also the tax benefits for homeowners. I do a couple different ones with the CPA. Garrett, he's great. I have a couple on YouTube you could actually check out, but he's really good and he goes over what different things that you can write off. That's a good one. Also, when we are in those bidding war situations, right now, luckily it's not so much like that, but especially during the pandemic, I was doing calls on the winning the bidding war. I take pride in being able to get offers accepted and negotiate for my client. So there's a lot of different things that I like to talk about on that for people that like to get in the weeds on thing. There's some type A personalities that want to get in the weeds. Hey, we can go as deep as you want, and that's a call for that person. Also, someone that wants to get an idea for what to expect during a home inspection, I will do a call. This is typically once a quarter, and I'll have an inspector on the call and he'll just go over what he looks for. So then the good thing is when we go out and look at properties, a lot of you could start paying attention to some of that stuff when we're looking, or if you go to an open house, different things that you could look for. Also, if you take your phone out, you can just take your phone and if you've done this before, I'm going to teach everyone how to scan with a QR code. So what you're going to do is go to the camera function on your phone, click that, and then you're going to scroll over the QR code. It'll pop up on there, select it, and then it's going to go to the website. This is just some of the calls that are coming up. I got to schedule some, but just know that is an option on there. And then that was a long call, but thank you all for joining on that. But did anyone have any questions? And Kimberly and Andrew, if anyone threw anything in the chat, then that would be great. And if not, that's fine too. While people are asking questions or maybe typing it in there, just know that you could always reach out to us. The next slide, I'll give you all of our info one more time. Also, you can go to my Calendly link if you want to schedule a call with myself or Kimberly. We could schedule it both through there. And then you could also scan that you just learned how to scan a QR code. You could scan that QR code on there. That just goes to the Calendly link. And
I also put the link in the chat as well too.
oh, cool. Great. Yeah, so you could always click on that, save it for do it later if you want, or type in the calendly.com/your realtor David. That works too. All right. And then I do have two different options on here. We have a seller strategy consultation. Sometimes we have sellers that sneak on this call and they just need a refresher on when they do want to buy. Know that we will go deep into that if you are looking to sell, or if buyer discovery session. But the good thing is we started doing that today, but the good thing is when we meet one-on-one, I know there's a lot of people on the call today, so we can't ask all of you questions and find out exactly what you're looking for. But when we go one-on-one, then we could find out exactly what type of home you're looking for, the areas, what's your future look like, and what size of home do you need, all that fun stuff. All right. Any questions that are in there? Or did we answer everything? And then that's good too.
There is one question. How do you know what's the best loan program to choose?
That's a good one. Let's go. Let's let Andrew jump in his lane, in the lender lane.
Yeah, that's a very great question, very valid. I would say it's definitely not a one size fits all. If you're ever curious to see what makes it the most sense for you, I would encourage you just to reach out to me. Depending on what your current situation is and what you're looking for, that might impact what loan program might be the best for you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of that, this is our info. And this is a good page to maybe if you want to take a screenshot of it or take a picture of it, that works. Or even better, you could just take your phone and then just type our info into your phone. That'll be even better.
Also in the chat now.
Oh, you're throwing in the chat too. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you could always see it there as well. And then if anyone is on Instagram here, or even if you're not, you can still view some of our videos. So we have a lot of content out there. You could just do the same. This is a QR code on the bottom. Again, take your camera, scan over the QR code, and you could follow all three of us. Kimberly and I post a lot about real estate. You also can learn a little bit about our personality. We can be a little quirky at times, and we do a lot of fun stuff with our community. And then we also do a lot of educational stuff for real estate. So make sure you check that out. And whenever we have listings coming up, we would also throw those in there so you could see what's going on. And we always have some good stuff. And then Andrew also does he does a lot of financial education stuff. All right. That being said, I want to thank you all one more time for joining the call today. It was great. We had some really good questions, and we hope to see you all in a future call. And then if you guys want to say bye real quick.
Thanks a lot for joining. I hope you learned something. And again, feel free to contact us if you have other questions that you don't want to ask publicly.
Yep. Thank you all for joining. And we're here if you need us.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone. And have a lovely day. Take care.